Good evening, everyone. Happy Thursday, May 14, 2020. The time is now 6:02, and this is St. Louis Community College Board of Trustees. Thank you for joining us tonight. And again, we hope you are well, healthy, safe, and taking care of yourself and each other during these interesting, trying times. As we're going to be doing another virtual meeting for the unforeseeable future, we're going to go ahead and get started with a roll call vote, please.
Kevin and Martin.
Here.
Pam Ross.
You're muted, Pam, just so you know.
Libby Fitzgerald.
Okay.
Oh, Pam Ross here. Libby Fitzgerald.
You're muted too.
Doris Graham.
Yes.
Craig Larson. Craig Larson, you're not here, right? And Ann Marshall. Here.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Pam, your view went away, your camera view, just to let you know. So again, welcome to our guests. We appreciate everyone who's out there wide and far. So we are going to go ahead and move on to item number 3, citizens wishing to address the board regarding agenda items. There are several comments. I'm going to go start reading them. Agenda item number 11. Libby, it has been a great pleasure to get to know you through all the years at STLCC. You've been a tireless advocate for STLCC students, the faculty and staff, and the St. Louis community. You have always been a warrior for all students, but especially the international students. Being an immigrant yourself, you understand the unique needs of this group of students and have done everything in your power to make sure they have a voice and that the college provides services and programs to meet their needs. You have served the full-time faculty as the NEA Executive Council member, as well as serving as the NEA president 2 times. I know firsthand that the stress that role brings upon your life. Upon retirement, you can easily move into a passive role related to STLCC. You chose not to do that, but instead ran 2 STLCC Board Trustee election campaigns and won both. Continuing to serve STLCC 12 years after retirement is admirable, honorable, and shows what a champion you are for STLCC. I love you like a second mother and wish you joy, peace, and fulfillment in your STLCC free life. Cindy L. Campbell. The next one is from Dr. Henry D. Shannon.
Oh boy.
Dear Libby, congratulations on your outstanding service as a long-standing STLCC trustee and professor of counseling, St. Louis Community College at Forest Park. Enjoy the next phase of your life. Sincerely, Henry D. Shannon. Good evening, Chairman Martin, trustees, students, faculty, and staff. I often rise as the full-time faculty union president to speak at board meetings to share the concerns of the full-time faculty. Tonight, however, I'm happy to see that my comments are focused on positive contributions of one of the greatest friends of St. Louis Community College, trustee, professor, and counselor, Libby Fitzgerald. Libby Fitzgerald dedicated her service for 36 years to providing excellent mental health services and education to students of STLCC. Not only that, Ms. Fitzgerald served 2 terms as the president of Full-Time Faculty Union, and in that role worked hard to ensure fair wages and working conditions for the faculty. Libby knows from experience that when you take care of the faculty, you take care of the college. In her now 12 years of service as a trustee, Libby has demonstrated her care, not just for the faculty, but for all the employees of the college. Moreover, she has remained committed to the unions and unionism and union labor as she has advocated for all bargaining units at STLCC. We will miss her voice, her expertise, and her wisdom. As expressed in the board's own recognition of Trustee Fitzgerald, Libby is active in the St. Louis community and will remain so. We all know that while this role is ending, Libby will continue to seek out new opportunities to teach the community and promote lifelong learning. Libby Fitzgerald, in her roles as teacher, counselor, advocate, and trustee, is carrying on the proud tradition of truth-seeking, and wisdom we all remember from reading the Dialogues of Plato, Book 5. Libby reminds us that the power and capacity of learning exist in the soul already, and that just as the eye was unable to turn from darkness to light without the whole body, so too the instrument of knowledge can only by the movement of the whole soul be turned into the world of becoming into that of being, and learn by degrees to endure the sight of being, and for of the brightest and best of being, or in other words, of the good. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Libby Fitzgerald. Thank you on behalf of the full-time faculty at St. Louis Community College, Emily M. Neal. Libby, congratulations on 12 years of service as a trustee. However, this is only a small part of your legacy at STLCC. I do not know of anyone who has served St. Louis Community College like Libby Fitzgerald. As a faculty member, NEA leader, trustee, counselor, mentor, and friend, your relentless and tireless support of the mission of St. Louis Community College has been present for over 45 years. I believe your greatest qualities come from your experience as a counselor. You treat others with respect and empathy that is empowering. No matter the issue or concern, your zeal and enthusiasm is limitless. Your contributions are not just to STLCC, but you often are a lifelong advocate for teaching and learning that was extended well beyond the college into the greater St. Louis community. Enjoy retirement, but I do not think that's in your vocabulary. Doug Hurst. And there's one other one. Dear Ms. Fitzgerald, I want you to know how much we appreciate the outstanding service you have provided to St. Louis Community College for the past 46 years. Not only have you served the college with distinction for 34 years as a faculty counselor at Forest Park campus, but also as a member of the College Board of Trustees for 2 consecutive terms totaling 12 years. It is people like you who make an everlasting mark in our community. As a member of the Board of Trustees, you showed enormous commitment and dedication in your role. You are distinguished yourself as a steward of the community college by sharing your time and resources with us. Thank you for giving a special attention to issues concerning our students and faculty members. As you look back at your years of involvement with St. Louis Community College, please know that our achievements would not be possible without your leadership. Thank you for your kind service to St. Louis Community College and our Board of Trustees, Sandra Knight, Counselor. So thank you, Libby. We'll be recognizing you later on in the meeting. So those are all the public comments. We appreciate everyone taking the time to share Libby's last full meeting with us as a trustee for the last 12 years. Currently, we to item number 11. I'm sure Libby and others will have more words to share. Moving on, adoption of the agenda as presented with the amendments that were attached. Is there a motion for approval? You're all muted, so.
So moved.
Been moved by Larson. Second by
Second.
Graham. Thank you. Any corrections, eliminations, discussions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5, which is the recommended approval of the April 16, 2020 work session. Is there a motion for approval? Been moved by Marshall,
Second.
second by Ross. Any corrections, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
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 Abstentions, noes, yeas have it. Item number 6, recommended approval of April 23rd, 2020 work session minutes. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Been moved by Ross,
Second.
second by Marshall. Any discussion, corrections? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions, nays, yeas have it. Thank you. Item number 7, recommended approval of the April 23rd, 2020 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Been moved by
Second.
Graham, second by Marshall. Any corrections? Comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstentions? Nays, yeas have it. Thank you. Item number 8 is always a great time of year. Usually this is the time we get to celebrate our faculty in person, and I'm pleased, pending the board consent agenda item, the official approval of our faculty who have earned new ranks. And so tonight we're honoring 18 STLCC faculty members who've been recommended for promotion in rank. We'll recognize them by campus, and each campus president will be announcing the names of the respective faculty. We will begin with Florissant Valley campus with Dr. Elizabeth Perkins.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. We will
I am proud to announce that the 3 faculty members have been recommended for promotion tonight. They are Joseph Bauer, who will become an assistant professor in mathematics STEM B, Maria Darris, who will become an assistant professor in nursing health sciences, and Linda Collins, who will become a professor in history and liberal arts. Congratulations, Joe, Maria, and Linda.
Thank you, Dr. Perkins, and thank you to those faculty members for all of your service at our Florissant Valley campus. We certainly appreciate it. Next is Dr. Julie Fickus, who will announce Forest Parks faculty promotions. Dr. Fickus.
Thank you. I'm pleased to announce that 6 faculty members have been recommended for promotion tonight. They are Stephen Pitchford, who will become an assistant professor in nursing, Jason Boehm, who will become an associate professor in mathematics, Joseph Jackson, who will become an associate professor in automotive technology, and Karen Miller, who will become an associate professor in nursing. Also, we have Lori Orlando, who will become a professor in teacher education, and Casey Schiller, who will become a professor in hospitality studies. Congratulations to you all.
Thank you, and congratulations to our Forest Park campus faculty members rising in rank. And now Dr. Felicia Moore Davis will announce Merrimack's faculty promotions. Dr. Davis.
Faculty members have been recommended for promotion tonight. They are Jean Dempsey, who will become an assistant professor in English as a second language, Maxine Beach, who will become an associate professor in English, Elizabeth Grenier, who will become a professor in biology, and Troy Hansen, who will become a professor in counseling. We also have Lisa Harden, who will become a professor in mathematics, Michael Swoboda, who will become a professor in graphic communications, and Barbara Weishart, who will become a professor in legal studies. Congratulations to all of you.
Thank you so much. Next up is Dr. Carol Lapardis, who will announce Wildwood's faculty promotions. Dr. Lapardis.
Thank you. I am delighted to announce that 2 faculty members have been recommended for promotion tonight from Wildwood. They are Jenna Miller, who will become an assistant professor in behavioral health support, and Sarah Fielding, who will become a professor in English. Congratulations, Jenna and Sarah.
Congratulations again to all these faculty members, and we thank them for their service and hard work to expand minds and change lives in our students' work. Certainly, again, we wanted to make sure we had the opportunity. I know we can't be there in person, but I'm sure on behalf of all the board, we appreciate all of the work that all of our faculty do, and certainly earning these ranks is something that we want to make sure you have a special moment to recognize. So congratulations on all of your achievements, as we appreciate all that you did. Thank you again for that. We're honored to be able to still, in these trying times, be able to approve that appointment. So moving on to item number 9, the quarterly financial report. Mr. Zink. Or Mark, whichever one it is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Good evening, trustees, faculty, staff, and guests. In the board package under the finance tab, you will see the detailed financial reports for the 3rd quarter. I'm going to present a brief overview of the reports in a PowerPoint presentation. And I'll be happy to answer your questions when I'm done. First up, we have the general operating fund. And if you notice, the total revenues through March 31st of this year. And I'll put the caveat in there that most of this information is pre-COVID-19 or right when COVID-19 was starting. So there aren't going to be too many issues related to COVID-19 in here, but there will be a couple. Anyway, we had $126.8 million of revenues versus $106.5 million of expenses and transfers. Our transfers were up slightly to $2 or $3 million to the capital fund, which is why you see an increase in the expenses and transfers. In the general operating fund, on the revenue side, you'll see that local taxes is our largest single item at $60.5 million. We're going to talk about that one here in a minute, but the next is state aid, and then also maintenance fees and other revenue. I wanted to include this slide. The right-hand side of the slide I've included in previous presentations. It shows where we kind of receive our revenue from local taxes. This year, we're scheduled to receive approximately $63 million, $63.2 million in taxes based on our tax rate set that was in October. To date, we've only collected $60.5 million. Of course, with the counties being down, we're hoping that can solve itself before year end. These are cash basis receipts, so when we get to the end of the year, we will be having to do an accrual for anything that's not paid. And these are actually, it says 2020 taxes, but they're taxes that were due at the end of 2019. So this is a COVID related issue. On the expense side, the expenses, salaries and wages are down slightly, and the benefits were up slightly for the year. I think on the benefit side, I didn't see anything that stuck out. It was probably more timing issues. I did include a slide for utilities, as we've done in the past meetings. Of course, these numbers are through the end of March, which will not have an impact as it relates to our COVID-19 closure or stay-at-home orders or move to online. So I fully expect in the fourth quarter, these numbers will be down and possibly down substantially.
Hey, Mark,
Yes.
Sorry. Do you know, I'm just curious, why our gas is so much cheaper?
No, I can find out for you, but
I'm just curious because it's almost half of what it was 2 years ago. So I'm just curious.
Well, I'm gonna say that it was probably a milder winter, but I don't, that's just speculation on my part. I'll find out the answer for you and get back to you. I do want to bring up one other thing. It's on a previous slide. Okay.
If you'd like. There's a couple of issues involved there. A part of it was a much more mild winter, of course. We also, at Forest Park, for example, we took offline the A and B tower, heating and cooling as we started to do the abatement in those buildings. We couldn't have air circulating around. So there's a lot of savings at that campus for that reason through the winter season. And then lastly, we have, I'm trying to start my video, Mr. Chair, it won't let me. There we go. We have over the last couple of years continued to work with a representative, also through Spire and with a consultant in changing our rate from the market rate to a transport rate, and then now to a large service rate. So we experienced some savings through that process. We've actually saved over the course of 4 years in dealing with this consultant about $2 million on our gas expenditures overall from what they would have been at the old rate. So that is without Mark's further analysis, likely what's causing the difference in the gas there. Thank you.
I wanted to go back one item on state aid. As you are aware, the state has reduced the amount of funding we're going to receive this year. So we were receiving monthly $3,387,000. And that has been reduced the last 3 months of the year to $2,261,000, which will effectively take us 1/12 down for the fiscal year. Technology fee, the dollars in, are going to be close to the dollars out. There was nothing significant in there in the technology fee. As the same as for college and student activity fees, the amounts that are down are primarily related to credit hours being taken. Expenditures and transfers are down also for that, but some of that will be timing, club expenses, that type of thing, that will be transferring to agencies. The public safety pedestrian, the amount is we've got a net decrease in fund balance of $16,000, but that's primarily related to an increase in the budgeted transfers for this fiscal year, and those occur at the front end of the year. Other funds that are in your statements are the rental facilities, student aid fund, restricted, auxiliary, agency, self-insurance, and capital funds. And my final slide is, and I apologize, I don't have new pictures for you. This is the Center for Nursing and Health Sciences. We're at $35.8 million roughly, and we have $4.6 million at the end of the year. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for the update, and I'm sure the end of the year one will be certainly different as we look at COVID, and obviously that's when the state reductions will come into play as well of what they've taken away. So appreciate all that work. Any other questions for any of the trustees? All right, thank you so much, Mark. Be safe out there, and we're going to go to Paul. I believe Paul's going to present the draft budget for 2021.
Yes, sir, I am. And you should have received an email that had this presentation and also our draft budget book like this for the trustees. I apologize for the lateness of that. We've been working, pretty diligently to try to account for any last minute changes. I'll explain as I go through the presentation. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, trustees, Chancellor Pittman, and all of our faculty, staff, and guests who are joining us through the power of Zoom and YouTube. I appreciate bringing you the presentation of the college's draft fiscal year 2021 budget. I usually have my colleague, Sherry Keeper, who is the college's budget coordinator, assist with this presentation. We just thought it'd be difficult to do given the use of this platform, but I certainly want to recognize Sherry for all of her tremendous work in preparing the college's fiscal year 2021 budget during this very extraordinary time. Needless to say, we've had significant added challenges this year. And also, of course, send thanks to the many staff and faculty and the leadership across the community college district who took part in our annual budget preparation process. It is really, I think, through their combined effort that we make the college's budget the best that we can to serve the institution's goals and strategic plan, and ultimately, of course, to serve our students and community. So I need to figure out how to share my screen here. I'm being challenged with technology that I can do that and get that moving for you. I think that will do it. Are we seeing the presentation at this time?
Yes, Paul.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So Missouri's revised statutes brings us to the presentation this evening. Revised statute of Missouri 67.010 directs that each political subdivision of the state prepare an annual budget and set forth the requirements which we are meeting through the budget being presented to you this evening. I just have some brief summary of that statute on the screen. And then, of course, your board policy further defines the budget schedule for the college. We will ask that you consider the budget documents presented to you this evening as a draft budget. as far as the estimates, and we'll ask you to consider a budget for adoption at your regularly scheduled June 25th Board of Trustees meeting. Board Policy H2 also includes guidelines on which our budget should be formed, and we'll revisit these guidelines at the conclusion of my presentation to just illustrate that we've met those guidelines. Administrative Procedures H2 provides further direction for the budget process and includes that we will gather input from across the district, which we had done over the late winter, or over the late fall rather, in winter months. While our process and timeline have been significantly impacted by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic situation, we had assembled and we're still able to consider that district-wide input as a basis for our presentation to you this evening. And I'll add at this time that we, of course, believe there will still be adjustments to the budget that I'm presenting. The impact of COVID-19 has disrupted the state budget rather significantly and will almost certainly have impact to our future state appropriations. So we are also projecting a significant change to enrollment due to the uncertainty surrounding the economy, the stay-at-home orders, and the other impacts of the pandemic crisis. So I'll talk about some of these impacts as we get a little bit deeper into the presentation. Details for the general operating budget summary on page 3 of the budget book that was provided to you by email. The general operating budget summarizes 3 funds that the college uses for the majority of our day-to-day business. These funds are the operating funds, the technology fee funds, and the college and student activity funds. Here you see that we are presenting a budget that is using funds from our fund balance, or reserves, as many like to call it. Much of the reserves fund balance we are recommending at this time to use comes from the technology fee fund and from the student activity fees related funds. And we are recommending that we draw from some of those fund balances in fiscal 2021 to cover expenses that are necessary, even with the reduction in revenue in these funds. You'll see that we have done much to address the deficit budget already, but we'll continue, of course, to work at this as more information becomes known, and we'll certainly welcome your discussion this evening related to these continuing efforts. So with that, let's dig into the fiscal 2021 budget. Detail for the operating funds budget can be found on page 4 of your budget book. It includes only the operating fund and does not combine the technology fee and student activity fee revenues and expenses as shown on the previous grouping. You see here that this fund is reflecting a draw of $2.6 million from the fund balance. And we'll provide some more detail on the fund balance here. These charts are an overview of our budgeted operating fund revenue for fiscal year 2021, that's next year, and of course the current fiscal year, fiscal 2020. This is aligned to the operating fund budget, again, that are on page 4 of your budget book. The 3 main sources of our operating revenue in fiscal 2021 will remain local taxes, state aid, and maintenance fees. Together, these sources make up about 96% of our operating revenue budget. These charts highlight that the overall proportions of each revenue sources will change in this year's recommended budget. Usually when we present this to you, the sort of proportions remain relatively the same from year to year, even though the numbers change, of course. So our local tax revenue will account for nearly half of our overall revenue, and you'll see a slight reduction in the proportion coming from state aid and a significant shift in the proportion accounted for by maintenance fees charged to our students. In the next few slides, you'll see more information about the budgeted operating revenue. So the local tax revenue, which is the largest, again, the largest portion of our annual revenues at the college, you see here that we have had an increase in taxes received over the past couple of years. And so we saw that again in Mark's presentation earlier on the quarterly financial reports. The tax that's levied by the district is 19.86 cents for every $100 of property valuation for residents of St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and those small portions of Jefferson County and Franklin County that fall within our taxing district. We believe the increased tax revenue here that we've received has been the result of a number of factors, but most notably, the improving economy over the past few years, up until the COVID-19 situation, of course, has resulted in new construction and development in our taxing district. So it increases the tax base, and that's where we see the increased dollars coming in. We don't believe that the situation with the economy currently is going to impact our tax revenue in next year, as the tax valuations and tax rate for 2020 is what we'll receive in fiscal year 2021. And while we go through the tax rate setting process in September, we'll put that in front of the Board of Trustees. Those valuations are only done every other year. So the valuations for property will be those that were determined last year. So accordingly, you can see that we're estimating a slight increase in our local tax revenue for fiscal year 2021. Is what we'll receive in fiscal year 2021. And while we go through the tax rate setting process in September, we'll put that in front of the Board of Trustees. Those valuations are only done every other year. So the valuations for property will be those that were determined. Okay, I thought somebody was asking a question. I guess I'm listening to my own echo there. I'm sorry for the pause. So the state aid figure that you see presented in the proposed budget is that which was agreed to and passed by the state legislature, by the General Assembly last week. They're still in session, of course. And what we've done is we've backed out two things. We've backed out the expected 3% reserve by the state. That's really kind of a statutory thing. It happens every year. The governor withholds 3%, and we rarely, if ever, have had an opportunity to see that later on. And we've also made the adjustment here for the equity pool adjustment with the other community colleges through the agreement between all 12 of the state's community colleges. So for this year, what happened in the legislature, we were mildly surprised, at least, that, and I know you've seen some updates from Chancellor Pittman, but the General Assembly passed a budget that had restored our funding to the same amount as last year. And when I say our funding, I mean the community college funding for the state. We fully expect that based on state revenue projections through the state budget office and the governor's budget office, there is likely at some point going to see some withhold or reduction from the governor. Not sure when the timing of that'll be, if that'll be done when the governor approves the budget or at that time, or if that'll be later on in the fall. So what we have done here is we've estimated a 10% reduction in state aid for fiscal 21 at this time. And this is one of those items that certainly, as we know a little more and things become more clear, we'll continue to watch that and adjust. So it does not reflect the $3.5 million withhold that occurred this spring. It's not a cumulative thing as we are presenting it here. So again, we'll continue to watch that, and there may be some change when we revisit the budget with you in June. So here you see our maintenance fee revenue makes up just a little bit less than 1/5 of our budgeted revenue for next year. You'll also see that our actual revenue for maintenance fees have fallen behind budgeted projection in each of the last 2 years. In the gray line on the chart here, we are presented to credit hour budget and actuals for the past 2 years. So you can see we're not quite meeting our budgeted credit hour projection in either of those years. So when we go back and we create this budget, we sort of use our IPEDS data, our actual enrollment data from the most current terms, instead of adjusting off last year's actual credit hour, off last year's estimated or projected credit hours. So it gives us a more realistic picture. And we also, in the case of this year, we've already reduced the revenue reduction for this current summer term. The way the summer terms work is half of the summer counts in each of the 2 fiscal years. So we reduced the revenue from this summer term by 30%. And then we are also estimating at this time a reduction for fall enrollment of 25%. We continue to closely watch fall enrollment, of course, and we'll adjust that as necessary. That's another of these items that, as we sort of see what shakes out with the current state of affairs with the stay-at-home orders and such, and the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's another number that we expect might change rather significantly between now and the time we present to you again in June. Maintenance fee revenue for fiscal year 21 does include the 3% increase on the per credit hour fees, which the board approved at your regular February meeting of this year. And I'll also just note, you see an item that continues to kind of move around a little bit. The second to the bottom item on this chart is the discount. And just to explain what that is, what is included here are a couple of things, the biggest of which is the Midwest Student Exchange Program, or MSEP, which is a compact that the college joined a few years ago. This allows students from neighboring states to, and participating states, of course, to attend at the in-state rate. So we basically just discount the out-of-state rate backward, and that's what is reflected here. Also included here is a discount for the state-mandated Returning Heroes program. The next slide here shows the budgeted revenue for our continuing education program. To reduce again as a result of the anticipated impact of the COVID-19 pandemic to these course offerings. The biggest part of the reduction here in the other revenue is due to the change in expected interest and investment income from the college's investments. You'll recall when the COVID situation started to get much worse here in the United States, the Federal Reserve dropped the federal rates to almost zero, and that impacts quite a bit our both our interest earnings and also our investment income. I'm just going to stop because my video has been messed up. If somebody can give me a signal if I'm still on. I'm not seeing anything on screen here.
You are on. It's just breaking up a lot, Paul, but we've been able to capture what you said.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So moving on to the funds, the operating funds, expenses and transfers, and we're still following on page 4 of your budget book. You see here the charts for our overall budgeted operating fund expenditures for fiscal years 21 and 20. And these charts highlight again the overall proportions among the expense categories remain relatively unchanged, the most notable shift being that from salaries to benefits. The reason for this is you'll see as we cover the salaries shortly, we have reduced the actual dollar amounts of salaries, and it's significantly lower because of the positions that remain in the budget but have been either frozen or unfunded to address these expected revenue shortfalls. The actual cost for for benefits is higher because of the additional healthcare expense that the board was presented, and the rates that you approved at the March 2nd special meeting of the Board of Trustees related to our health insurance programs for employees. As in the past, of course, you see that the fiscal 2021 expenditures and transfers is mostly committed to salaries and benefits, representing about 3/4 of our overall operating budget. The overall salary decrease of almost $8.5 million is the net effect of a lot of increases and decreases, including, as I alluded to earlier, the vacant positions that were frozen for fiscal year 21. So currently we have taken a look at vacant positions or potentially upcoming vacant positions, and we are freezing 75 of those full-time positions in the budget that's being presented to you. We'll believe that we'll return to a point of needing to fill these positions depending on how enrollment ebbs and flows, but we're recommending freezing them as a result of the anticipated reduction to state revenues from state appropriations and maintenance fee revenue. I expect some of these may be requested for funding if the enrollment decline is not as sharp as planned within this budget, or if the state budget situation improves and we do not see an additional withhold. You also see here some other of those changes on the screen, a 25% reduction in the adjunct and overload salary budgets, and that's just in alignment with the anticipated reduction in credit hour enrollment and section count. And so as we see changes to the enrollment actuals, we will need to address and adjust that as well. We've done a across the board reduction to the part-time salary expense budgets, so departments will need to plan for that and figure out how they are going to adapt to a lesser budget there, whether it's through reduced hours or perhaps, again, not filling positions that are vacant. This does include 10 new full-time positions. Most notably are the additional nursing faculty which are a result of our nursing expansion that was funded through the MOEX sales program, at least partially funded, the capital piece was. And we committed to expanding those programs when we applied for those state dollars. And there's other positions that were already approved by the board as part of the ongoing reorganization of the Human Resources Department. I'll just note that this budget presented does not at this point have any anticipated salary increases for faculty and staff. It is really important to note that we're still in the negotiations phase with all 6 of our employee unions as required by their various joint resolutions. So that too is a number that you might expect to change in the future. Although salary expenses declined significantly through the freezing of positions and those other items, you see here very little change from fiscal year 20 in the benefit expense, and that's because the increase in composite fringe benefit rate. This benefit rate is recalculated every year, and it incorporates not just changes to the health insurance costs, but also costs for unemployment and work comp claims, vacation accrual payout, and a number of other factors. The most notable increase, as noted on the slide presented here, is the additional $1.5 million in institutional expense for the healthcare options offered to employees that was approved at your March 2nd special meeting. Supplies and services expense budgets were decreased to adjust to a rolling average of actual expenditures and then adjusted based on changing needs. And this is where a lot of the input and work that goes on across the district is really important. You see here that we have increased expenses where appropriate for what we consider to be mandatory expenses for already agreed upon leases and license agreements, increased insurance rates from our carry for liability, property, and other institutional insurance policies. We are already in those agreements, and so we just need to account for the planned increases. The increase we see here is based upon general increases to the utility rates by Ameren, Spire, and others. I do expect that we will be able to adjust this number as we do a little more analysis on the effect of the reduced use of campus buildings through this time that we are working from home and offering classes online only. So this is an area of potential savings. So in the slide for transfers to other funds, and again, I'm having issues with my technology, but you see a decrease in your budget book of the transfers to and from other funds. And mostly that is because last year we had allocated $2 million for the campus facility renewal projects, and we've set aside this transfer in the current year due to the anticipated reduced revenue from the state and maintenance fees. So we'll certainly want to resume that effort in future years, and we'll keep an eye on the ability to do that. There's also a lesser transfer in from the technology fee, which is the per credit hour fee that is assessed to students for credit hour enrollment. Moving on to from the general operating budget to the technology fee budget, that's on page 6 of your budget book. You see here that it's impacted by the decrease in budgeted credit hours. And this is a technology fee that is charged as $11 for each generated credit hour. Even with this reduced revenue, however, we wanted to be able to continue the life cycle renewal of student computer labs and standardized classroom technology. Therefore, we plan to use technology fee fund balance that has accumulated from prior years. This is why you see the expenses and transfers exceeding the revenue and causing a deficit budget in this fund. The college and student activities budget's on page 7 of your budget book. Like with the tech fee budget, the revenue here is impacted by the decrease in the credit hour enrollment budget. And so what we've done here is reduced expenses accordingly to keep this particular balance in budget. Moving on to the maintenance, repair, debt service, and capital summary, you see this fund's budget on pages 10 through 12 of your budget book. Recommended spending for maintenance, repair, and capital is about $1.7 million less than last year because, as I mentioned earlier, we did not set aside funds for the campus facility renewal committee to allocate. We are, however, continuing to renew technology across the district, both in classroom and also network hardware, to improve student and staff experience, and also software applications for both our staff and our students. we're continuing to invest in upgrades also to the campus public safety equipment and camera systems across the district. You see a number of other smaller fund budgets in your budget books. We also request your consideration of these recommended budgets, and we'll ask for their adoption at the June meeting. The public safety, pedestrian and traffic access budget, the student aid budget, and the auxiliary service budgets are all impacted by student enrollment, while the rental of facilities and the restricted fund budgets are affected by funds that we receive from outside agencies. I just will point out the note on the screen here you see regarding the CARES Act funding. The CARES Act funding was approved for the college in the amount of almost $7 million. About exactly half of that was designated for student aid grants, and we're in the process. We've already begun the process of passing that money through to our students. The other half, we're still working on exactly what we'll be able to use those funds for. And so if we do not spend out those funds in this current fiscal year, then we will, of course, have to adjust that in the next fiscal year budget. We have up to a year to use those funds, so we're still sort of working on what we're going to allocate to that funding and what of course is authorized by the Department of Education. So you'll see all the detail for these additional funds in the budget books, but in consideration of your time, I'm not presenting a great deal of detail on them now. Before we conclude, I just want to revisit the budget guidelines and board policy H2. Keep in mind that these guidelines refer to the general operating budget, which is comprised of the operating budget, tech fee budget, and the student activity fee budget. The first guideline indicates salary and budgets. Benefit budgets should not exceed 75% of the general operating budget. And we, in our budget presentation tonight, have met that guideline. The next guideline recommended capital projects should not exceed 8% of the general operating budget. And we have met that with a 4.2% transfer from the operating fund to capital. And then finally, board policy allows that our debt service, these are our leasehold bond payments, should be below 5% of the budget. And in our presented fiscal year 21 budget, we are below that threshold. This, Mr. Chair, concludes the presentation of our draft fiscal year 2021 budget. And I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you, Paul. I do have a couple of questions myself, and then I'll go through all the trustees if I may. Does this budget include any line items for possibly facility study, long-term range plan in terms of that?
Not at this time, it does not. We do have some fund balance that is remaining in our capital accounts for some projects that we either have finished or in some cases, some projects that we may not move forward. I don't believe we would need to make additional transfers for that purpose. And we should be able to, within the transfers that are in our capital budget at this time, be able to allot for that.
Got it. And what is what I call our reserves amount? I won't say at current day, but for this fiscal year.
At the end of fiscal year 19, and so that's really the only time that we do all of the various adjustments. You may recall that number is affected or impacted pretty heavily by the pension liability and those things. Our reserves, if you will, or unrestricted net fund balance, which is the accounting term for that, was just right around $18 million. I think just a little bit less than that, which was within the threshold that our board policy has established. From the financial presentation that Mark Swadner did just a short time ago for you, Mr. Chair, you know, that was through the third quarter and before we see the impact of the state reductions. So, you know, we're still going to have to see how that impacts the end of this year. And then, of course, that pension liabilities has a pretty significant impact on the budget, and that is affected quite a bit by market changes for those investments that are out there for our retirement plan. So still much to be seen as far as how the year end is going to treat us with fund balance.
Got it. I just want to kind of see long range, I guess, when we approve the final budget, where we're at in terms of what I'll call our reserves, not our pension liability, but our reserves piece. Because was it, if I'm not mistaken, was $11 million this year when we started, or is it more?
I'm sorry, I lost you for just a bit. What was the?
Was it
number you're
$11
asking?
million this year when we started, or was it more? I can't recall the exact amount.
The fund balance?
The reserves, not the pension liability, just the reserves part. So after you took the
The reserves was the number that was around 17 million at the beginning.
17, got it. And are we projected to have a balance? If I'm reading this correctly, what you presented showed that we would be using, was it using 4.5 million from that reserves?
That is the overall use. About 2.6 of that is in the general operating fund. The other is in those other funds that we sort of leave within those funds from unspent dollars in the technology fee budget. Also the public safety, pedestrian traffic access budget. But yes, you are correct. It's showing an overall deficit of the 4.7.
So is there any way for us to be able to get to a balanced budget?
Well, that's the magic question. So I know you've seen some announcements, from the administration, Mr. Chair. We've put together a what we've called a COVID-19 budget response team that has already started meeting and are going to be taking a look at what we may do to sort of affect that bottom line number. Also, things that really impact that number is the state funding, which is still a little uncertain, and what actually happens with enrollment. So, there's a lot of unknowns out there. Our crystal ball is quite a bit cloudy as far as what's going to happen there. So hopefully by the time we come back to you in June, we certainly will have a little more clarity on a lot of those issues.
Because part of my fear is if we keep going into our reserves of 17 million or whatever, it's not necessarily sustainable and we don't know what the future holds. So it's difficult. And I know we're not approving a budget today, but just from my perspective, would really want us to be mindful of that dollar amount.
Yes, sir.
I think that was all my questions for right now that I could think of. Trustee Fitzgerald, do you have any questions? No. Trustee Ross, do you have any questions? You're muted, just so you know.
Okay,
There you go.
so I was looking at the list of assets, and I noticed that some of them were at zero interest. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, I can. So the list of, so this is the investment list that's listed in the actual board agenda item under finance. Ms.
Right.
Ross. We are rather restricted in how we can invest these public dollars. We're restricted by the state treasurer's guidelines. So any excess cash or investments need to be basically invested in this cash, what are deemed cash equivalents. So the cash equivalents are really closely aligned to and impacted by the Federal Reserve rate. And so when the Federal Reserve made those changes in March, which was prior to that report, of course, that affected basically the net yield of those investments. And so you'll see an awful lot of them that are pretty close to zero. We are not allowed to invest in any kind of market securities,
Right.
and things like that. So it's basically government treasury securities, government agency securities, things like CDs and cash equivalents and commercial paper to some degree.
Okay. I saw some of them, they're low, but then there were like, I don't know, 4 of them on there with a zero interest payment.
Yeah, and if you have specifics, I could maybe take a look at those for you and provide a better answer for those individual securities. I really only speaking in more of an overall sort of.
Okay, that's okay.
Of our portfolio.
They might just be, like parking them there temporarily. for safety.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Did we lose Kevin?
I wonder. No fearless leader. Well, does anyone have any other questions? I guess we could move forward.
Sorry about that.
I don't have any questions.
Thank you,
Okay.
Paul. Appreciate it. All the work on that. And it'll be interesting to see what we have in the future.
I did want to make a couple comments or questions.
Yes, go ahead.
So, you know, it is so impossible to plan for the future because we don't know what's coming, but you have to kind of think about different alternatives. And I'm just wondering if Paul could comment on a potential scenario like this. We are cut by the state and we don't, you know, we need to use some of our reserves. But then in the spring, we actually see an increase in enrollment because people are feeling the effects of the continued layoffs and, you know, want to come back to college. What risk do we put ourselves at? Are we, by not hiring, are we going to lose flexibility? Are we, and I'm not being critical. I'm just trying to get a sense of, you know, how nimble can we be if the need from the potential students increases over the next 2 years, but we've been caught at the beginning. It seems like kind of a recipe for disaster.
It looks like he was kicked out, just so you know. His internet hacked, so he'll probably be trying to come back in, I assume.
Hi, I'm back in at this time, Mr. Chair, and I did hear
there you
the
go.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience with my technology situation here. I believe what we're trying to do with this budget that we are presenting to you tonight, and we will ask you to approve in June, is meet the statutory requirements that you pass a budget and also our own board requirements. Dr. Larson, there is certainly nothing that would prohibit us from revisiting the budget at some later date. And in fact, I really fully expect that we will do that and ask you to revisit the budget with us sometime in the fall when we have many more answers and much more clarity by way of what is happening with enrollment. And certainly by then we'll know more about the state situation. So I think we will be able to be responsive and adapt to those changes as they occur. I don't have a fear that we're locking ourselves into something that would be problematic at this time.
Okay. The stimulus money, I mean, I'm working with K-12 schools, and those with fairly large Title I programs are getting, you know, a lot of money, $3 million, which is, you know, designed to help them kind of bridge the situation. And some of them are also getting a payroll guarantee money. It didn't look like we were up for any of that. We get a chunk of money in that CARES Act, but it's really designed to help students more than the college. Am I missing that, or is that correct?
I think the way that you've stated that, Dr. Larson, is exactly correct. The half of the almost $7 million, so the $4.3 million that was for student aid grants, the institution cannot use at all. That really is pass-through money that they just are using us as a fiscal device to deliver that to the students. The other 4.3, we're also being encouraged to provide that to students as we are able, but anything that we spend at the institutional level must be very directly related to our changes to have to continue providing instruction during the COVID situation. So some of the things that we've done there is we almost $1 million worth of laptops that the college had in our inventory. We signed out to students and faculty and staff to be able to continue the spring enrollment, the spring semester, I should say, in an online environment. So that would be a qualifying expense. Certainly the other things that we have to do related to PPE and things like that to continue our mission, but it's very specific that it must be COVID related, and it cannot be used to offset other shortfalls from things like enrollment decline and state revenue reductions.
Thank you. I'm sad to hear that, but that's what I thought was true, and I wanted to be verified because that money ain't going to really help us with the immediate problems.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your questions. Any other questions for today? Again, we'll have another month and a lot can change between now and the June board meeting, certainly. Thank you, Paul. We appreciate your time today and your presentations and look forward to that work and trying to get to a balanced budget as much as possible. Moving on to item number 10, which is under tab D, executive session for June 25th, 2020. It is for litigation 610.021, for lease and real estate 610.0212, personnel matter 610.0213, representations for negotiations 610.0219, personal identifiable employment issue 610.02113, and for disclosure by law 610.02114. Is there a motion for approval? You're all muted, just so you know. So
moved.
It's been moved by Marshall.
Second.
Second by Larson. Any correction? Any comments? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Fitzgerald,
You're all muted.
Graham,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Marshall. Yes. Ross,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Appreciate that. So the next item is the resolution honoring our longstanding trustee Fitzgerald. So I'm going to read the resolution and then seek that. I believe this is it. Whereas Ms. Fitzgerald served admirably as the chair of the board in 2012 to 2013, as vice chair 2009, 2010, and 11 and 12. Whereas her diverse leadership experience in education and community service, Ms. Fitzgerald served the board energetically in a focused professional manner. And whereas Ms. Fitzgerald represented the district on the state level by attending conferences of the Missouri Community College Association and the national level Association of Community College Trustee Leadership Congress. And whereas Ms. Fitzgerald has served several awards for her service to St. Louis Community College, including the Forest Park President's Star Award in 1995, Innovation of the Year Award for the League of Innovation Community Colleges in 1996, and the President's Wow Award in 2004. Whereas Ms. Fitzgerald has devoted her time to serving those in need through her role as President and Vice President of the Untitled Chapter, which promotes academic excellence, scholarship among young women, and as a board member of the Federation of America and a group that defends human rights for the Greek ethnic minority of women. And whereas during her 12 years of service on the Board of Trustees, Ms. Fitzgerald dedicated herself to quality of education for students, fiscal accountability to taxpayers, ensured her decisions as a board member remain in the best interest of the college. Now therefore be resolved, the St. Louis Community College Board of Trustees name recognizes Libby Fitzgerald for her service to the college and sincere heartfelt appreciation. Be it further resolved, the expression of gratitude and appreciation be made on a permanent part of record of the State Board of Trustees on this 14th day of May 2020. So Libby, first, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Then moved.
Second.
Second by Marshall. Any comments? Dr. Graham?
I was trying my best to unmute so I could second, but I was too slow. But I want to say to Libby, it has been just wonderful being on the board with you. I learned so much from you, and I just hate to see you go, but I know you're going to have a wonderful time with your granddaughters and doing your community work and having fun with your friends and going back home to Greece. But know that you will be missed. And thank you for all that you have done on the board. I don't think she heard me because she's muted.
She heard you. She just can't speak back yet. Pam, do you have any comments?
I was just gonna second Doris's comments, because we always learn a lot about what's going on with the faculty that I hope we will not lose with our new board member. So it is hard to lose Libby's long time understanding about what's gone on.
Thank you.
So we
Marshall?
appreciate your work, Libby.
Marshall, any comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Libby, for welcoming me so wholeheartedly to the board and being so kind and generous with your time and really showing me the ropes. I'm going to miss you. You're a connection with my dad, which is pretty cool. So I can't thank you enough for being such a great mentor to me. Thank you.
Dr. Larson, I didn't know if you said anything or not. I can't remember.
I just made the motion. Libby and I have spent 10 years together. And, to be fair, we haven't always agreed, but we've always gotten along. And I think that's admirable that people can sometimes be on opposite sides of an issue and absolutely listen to each other and value the other opinion. Having said that, I'd say the thing I've really enjoyed the most about these 10 years with Libby is her love of Greece, which is obviously deep-seated, but talking about travel, and that encouraged me some years ago to start doing travel. I've now been to Europe, I guess in the 10 years, I've been to Europe 8 or 9 times. So and she's not the only reason, but she certainly helped, and she encouraged my wife to see that was something that we ought to try to do. Lastly, I would say nobody loves their grandkids more than Libby. And that's a blessing that she is certainly awarding to her grandkids and her children, but also something she can look forward to in the future.
Thank you. And Libby, I appreciate all that you've done for the college and for the board, and certainly helped me understand how the board operates and see things from different angles, and all the countless phone calls that we've had together. I certainly appreciate. So Jessica did mail to Libby a frame of the resolution. So she has a framed copy of it. And so I wish we were able to celebrate with you in person today, but obviously we truly appreciate all the service that you've done to the college. 12 years is a long time, on top of the many decades you served as an employee for the college. So Libby, do you have any comments? You are muted right now, just so you know. You're still muted.
She's still muted.
Can someone unmute her, please? There you go.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, when I was a young faculty back in 1974, and somebody told me that you will spend the next 46 years in this college, I would look around and say, you're nuts. You really actually come from a different planet. So it wasn't anything that's expected, but the 34 years I spent with the college, I honestly have to say, every day I look forward to coming to work. That's how much I love the college. I hated being sick sometimes, not because, I didn't want to be sick, but I didn't want to miss a day from work, because I really, really liked the students in college. It was the most beautiful experience that I can express that I had. And it was kind of like, as things go for an immigrant, I was just an immigrant person. When I got the position, I was only here like maybe 8-9 years. So it was just humbling to be able to get the position. And it was a really privilege and an honor. Every day I went to work, I said, God, thank you for giving me a place like this to work. And I feel the same way about the years that I served with the board. And as Craig said, Craig and I could disagree, but then we'd go out and have a drink and talk about other things. And there is an issue that you agree and disagree, but I do have to say this board in many issues has voted unanimously. I really enjoy Doris that I see now in each and every one of you. And I just think this is an outstanding board, an outstanding college. And all of you in your own way have really done a great job. You've been a friend, you've been a personal friend. I enjoy working with all of you, but most importantly, it is so great and such a humbling, awesome responsibility to be a board in this college. This is a wonderful institution. I know we're facing some challenges right now, but I think we're nimble and we'll be able to adjust and do a great job in the future. So I'll write some comments for Jessica to put them down because I'm kind of overwhelmed right now. But I can only say that I love this college and the students and the staff and the board and everyone in it. I think it's a wonderful institution and we have a wonderful board. And thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again. And with that, all in favor of approving the resolution for trustee Fitzgerald, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions, motion carries. Congratulations, trustee Fitzgerald. We appreciate everything that you've done, and certainly when we all can gather again, we'll come together to celebrate.
Stay on. I'm kind of. I had an outage this morning. I had to reboost my gateway, and I kind of want to stay on and listen to the child care report. But then I may just fade away.
Sounds good. And when we can all get in person again, we'll have to gather for a dinner, because I know meals are one of the most important things to you.
We pray to God, now it's a day to day. Every day you go out, you pray you're alive. So you're kind of fighting for survival, it's just you pray that you will make it through the winter and I have a vaccine and we'll all be okay. Right, Craig? I mean,
I'm on your side on that.
Yes.
Going to the grocery store
thank you again.
definitely is a new experience.
Yes, thank you again. Moving on to item
I
number
think we've
13.
got some rough months ahead of us.
Yes, child care report. Child care report, is there any update, Pam, on anything?
Well, Jeff and I had a nice conversation with the dean of the George Warren Brown School at WashU, and it looks like we're going to be able to work something out with their social workers. So maybe Jeff can talk about what he's figured out as terms of who might be able to supervise those practicum students from George Warren.
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Ross. And Trustee Ross mentioned we had a good meeting with the dean of Brown at Washington University. They're very interested in partnering with us on a practicum experience for their students, for their master's students. And we're looking internally to see if there would be an employee within St. Louis Community College that could serve as the facilitator or faculty member over the practicum. We also talked to the dean about potentially sharing a position at Washington University. I'm really excited about the opportunity because we have so many students that are in need now and will be for these types of workers. And I mean, that's one side of it. The other side of it is I've been trying to figure out how we could partner with Washington University since I arrived here 5 years ago. And before the previous chancellor moved on, Mark Wright and I would brainstorm many times on what we can do. But I think thanks to Trustee Ross, we may have found a great opportunity here that will serve our students well. So as we look for a credentialed faculty member either within the college or to be shared with WashU, we'll certainly keep you updated.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
Thank you
that.
to both of you for that. We appreciate it. Moving on to consent agenda items as presented. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
So moved.
Then moved by Ross,
I'll
second by
defer to
Larson.
Pam.
Yeah, so I'll do Pam. Was moved by Larson, second. Any items need to be pulled off or anything? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions, nays, ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to the Chancellor's report. Dr. Pittman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And Libby, thank you for staying. Don't leave yet. I had a few comments for you as well.
Okay.
I just want to say I really appreciate Libby's leadership. And like many of you, we've had too many phone calls to be counted. Libby, I'll always have fond memories of the first time we had lunch together at Bob's Pancake House. She then graduated me to authentic Greek food. Then we kind of settled in on the Cheesecake Factory as our favorite meeting place until recent events. So Libby, I owe you another lunch and look forward to seeing you after you complete your duties here. But I just want to thank you. It's been a pleasure to serve you and serve this board. And we appreciate how much you love our students and our faculty and staff and all you've done for the college. That's an incredible run. You should be very, very proud. So thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to begin by thanking all the faculty and staff and the trustees for this working so hard during this very difficult time. The faculty and staff have done a wonderful job this spring converting everything into an online modality. I can't thank them enough. Their resolve is incredible, and their care for the students is really coming through at this time. We've also moved to a fully online venue in summer, as you know, but certainly now fall is top of mind. And Dr. Martin and I talked about what I should include in my report tonight. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing for planning for classes for fall, and then turn it over to Hart Nelson, who is charged in his working on a safe return plan for all of our faculty and staff. In regards to the fall semester schedule, that was all developed pre-COVID-19, so we're pretty much back to square one. There's a team that's working on this right now. It is called the Fall Academic and Safety Team, or FAST is the acronym for that. And it's being co-chaired by Dr. Julie Fickus, president of Forest Park, and Kim Polk, who is a allied health faculty member at Forest Park. And they're basically looking at the fall schedule, and we're wanting to do whatever we can to offer classes for our students this fall, including looking at changing the number of students that we have each class and potentially offering as many online classes as we can, but certainly staying in alignment with CDC, state, city, and county guidelines, so we ensure the safety of our students, faculty, and staff as we get closer to the fall semester. I think the key word here is flexibility for this team. I like the acronym FAST because they're going to have to be pretty nimble, but I'll identify a few of the goals that they're working on. One is they're working with the employee safety and engagement team that is chaired by Hart Nelson to make sure that as we come back, we have good safety planning for the faculty, staff, and students in our classrooms, labs, offices, library, and academic support centers on each of the campus. For whatever we can do on ground, we'll try to do. That may mean that we only have class sizes of 8, 9, or 10. Just depending on what is allowed and what we're able to do safely. So they're working, as I mentioned, on fall course and program scheduling and suggested modalities that we need, and also thinking about flexibility, because we may very much have to consider ramping up for some on-ground classes. If the virus respikes, then we'll have to ramp back up over toward online classes more. So they're going to have to be very nimble as we work through this. The FAST team is composed of 9 faculty, 3 students, and 10 staff from the academic areas. So we appreciate them and the volunteering and the time. Their first meeting was today. They've been reviewing articles on the ways that other institutions are planning and working around county and city mandates and what best practices are and safe practices are. Currently, the fall schedule has approximately 3,400 course sections. 460 of those are online. 230 are hybrid, leaving about 2,700 classes that are face-to-face. We know that's going to be very, very difficult to manage, if not impossible, particularly if we have to shrink down the class section size, because some of these sections go up to as many as 70 students in our lecture courses. So we expect that there are going to be fewer face-to-face classes, many more hybrid classes, and many more online classes. They'll work to strategically offer general education courses that students may not bother to return to university this summer or fall. And I think, as Dr. Martin mentioned earlier, St. Louis Community College is a great option to consider when you look at our tuition rate. And if students are just going to be taking online classes, why spend 4 or 5 times as much to take the same courses? So that's what the FAST team is doing. Just to kind of touch base quickly on all the work that team will have to do. And then I'll turn it over to Hart Nelson, who is working on implementing our safety plan. So Hart, take it away.
Great, thanks, Chancellor. And thank you, Mr. Chairman and trustees, for allowing me to speak with you a little bit tonight about some of the work that we're doing. As Chancellor mentioned, I'm chairing our ESET and the IRT. I hope that you don't think that means I have so much time with the job that you hired me to do, but a lot of the work that we do in Workforce Solutions requires us to be on the ground. So I guess you would say I'm invested in getting us back. So we are very focused on ensuring a safe return to campus. So for our students, for the faculty and the staff, in what I think everyone is looking at as the new normal after these stay-at-home orders are relaxed. So what we've developed is a plan, that's the STLCC Safe Return Plan. It's based on work that's already been done by the employee and student engagement team and the incident response team. So we had to have some procedures and protocols in place just to allow our employees to work with kind of those essential duties, making sure that we provided for the security and safety of our buildings, processing payroll, doing those kinds of things that were always allowed under the stay-at-home orders. So to put this together, our team reviewed literally dozens of other plans. We obviously are focused on CDC, so the Centers for Disease Control, OSHA, and then the state and local guidelines. We've also been working, and you may have seen some news about this, with a group called the St. Louis Regional Business Recovery Initiative. These are the groups that are developing the very industry-specific procedures and protocols. And so a number of those have been developed in this space of retail, for example, for office buildings, but there isn't one yet developed and approved for higher education. And so we're involved in that. The plan that we put together is a phased approach based on the state of the pandemic. You may have heard someone a lot smarter than me say that the virus determines the timeline. We recognize that. The information and what we understand about the virus changes frequently, and so we have to be ready to respond. So the phases that we have as part of our Safe Return Plan first are to provide district-wide procedures. These are the things that we know are going to likely be true for some time and that we need to have consistent practice across the district. So for example, that's hygiene protocols, washing your hands frequently, not shaking hands, things like using face coverings and requiring that employees as well as students are using face coverings once we get to that point, if that is the expectation from public health authorities. So those are the kinds of things that are district-wide procedures. Then we're working with the individual departments, and this is where the ESET and the IRT become more of an advisory role. As the Chancellor mentioned, the FAST team being one of the most evident ones of these department groups that's figuring out exactly how they're going to conduct business, how they're going to be able to provide instruction and education, or in the case of student affairs, counseling and advising, for example. So we're working with them to basically flesh out those details. And then of course, there's some significant challenges when you talk about things like shared spaces. So this could be anything from cafeteria operations to how we handle elevator protocol, athletics teams, things like that. That all needs to be covered. As you were already talking about quite a bit tonight, especially with regard to the budget, this is a moving target. Our procedures need to be flexible enough, and we know that these teams are going to have to remain a resource for the departments as our understanding of this pandemic changes and as new orders are issued. Just as an example of that, we had new county orders issued on Friday. We had new city orders issued late Monday evening, and obviously new dates possibly of this coming Monday with some of the stay-at-home orders relaxed somewhat. Just being able to respond to that quickly is obviously a challenge. One of the other things that I think is very helpful with a large group, and I should be very clear that the ESET and the IRT are large groups. This is the work of dozens. It's certainly not we're bringing a lot of perspectives, but it is really thinking about all of these policies, not just from a administration or faculty perspective, but also from the student perspective and even from public vendors and other groups. So how do we get face coverings to our students? If this is a requirement, how do we get it distributed to them? How are we able to reconfigure rooms so that we can provide 6 feet of separation between individuals? And that's a particular challenge. How can we provide accessibility for those who may require an accommodation? One of the examples has been given for those who may be hearing impaired. How are we able to provide face coverings that allow them to read lips? So we have all of those things and are looking for input on that. And there is a way for anyone to provide input to these teams. And that's something that's going to be very key going forward. I wanted to highlight, just if I could, two specific things that have been taking place. One is, as I mentioned, the distribution of things like face coverings, but also things that you normally, there wouldn't be an issue. There's a normal distribution process for something like hand sanitizer and soap. It is much more of a challenge now with very constrained supply lines, and just the fact that we're going to be using quite a bit more of that in this pandemic. So I really want to compliment Justin Ruddick, who heads our auxiliary services normally, and a large team that's been supporting him on procurement of those and making sure they're getting to the right place. And just as another example, just on Friday, as I mentioned, and Monday, the new guidance was issued from the city and county. One of those things that's now a requirement is that all employees who will be working on site need to have a daily health screening. Now, this is something we had already put in place to make sure that anyone who may be ill isn't coming on campus, they're not spreading it. We want to encourage anyone who is symptomatic to stay home. That's just the best practice. But now we have a mandate to actually track that. And in just a couple of days, a group led by Dr. Perkins, also with Mike Hudspeth from our IT department, and Renee Dooley from Workforce Solutions and some others, have put together an electronic system to be able to track this, report on it, and it's in an online format. So it's going to be very easy to do. I worked in IT for for almost a decade, and I'm astonished at what they were able to do. So I just wanted to kind of highlight some really amazing work that's been done by your team here. One other thing that I want to mention, just on Trustee Larson's question about how flexible can we be, this has taught us with the changing requirements or understanding of this virus with the different stay-at-home orders. We're learning how to be very nimble and how to respond. We know that we've got to be able to make changes very quickly to keep people safe. And I think that this team is doing that. But obviously our goal, as I mentioned at the beginning, is to make sure we can get everyone back safely to our campus and make sure that we're able to provide a great education. So that's what we're working towards. Happy to answer any questions you may have about the plan, but it's been a pleasure to work on it so far.
Heart for all of your work and leadership and all those who are working on it. Certainly appreciate as we respond to uncertain times. And I'm sure as K-12, we're figuring out what school is going to look like in the fall. And I'm sure you all are as well too, of making sure in between classes, we're figuring out how do we sanitize the desk and all of those things. And even at the registration and having plexiglass or some type of shield in between people and our employees and our students, and figuring out all that. And another push for why we need our applications and course registrations on smartphones, I think, is more relevant today than even before, and certainly money probably well spent, because the more we can do things through technology, not have to actually pass papers back and forth to people, the better the spread is. So appreciate all that, and certainly it'll be interesting to see what changes. And tomorrow we could have a whole new verdict that comes out that throws us totally for a new glitch. So appreciate everyone's response and work towards that and understanding. And I wish we could all be back to a new normal and in classes. But I also hope that people seriously consider St. Louis Community College in the fall. If they're just doing online classes, that they consider St. Louis Community College and start their coursework rather than going away and spending the money elsewhere. So it's a great education for a great place. So thank you again for all of your work. Any other questions from the trustees? Pam, you're on mute. You're still on mute, Pam. I'm good at reading lips, but you're still on mute. You have a questions. I read that much.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank Hart for having a Zoom conference with the alder women in the city. And we're ongoing with them to reach out, hopefully to get a few students to sign up through the efforts of the alder women. And we're again meeting with a larger group of aldermen to discuss some of the ability that we have to really ramp up and train people for existing jobs. So Hart did a very nice job with that.
Thank you so much. Others? Thank you again, Hart. Dr. Pittman, any other reports or anything?
Just a couple of things, Dr. Martin. I want to also thank Hart. I know he really misses his old job, but we're really glad to have him in the role he's doing right now. He's just a bright and energetic young man. So I really appreciate all the great work he's doing. Also wanted to let you know, last night our county executive called me, Dr. Sam Page. He asked me to serve on the Economic Rescue Team Board. I don't really know what I'm in for yet on that one, but I'm very flattered that he asked. There's going to be 6 of us for the county. Rick Stevens is the CEO of Christian Hospital. He'll be serving as chair. I also serve on the BJC board. So I'm happy to be teaming up with Rick on this effort, and I'll keep you updated as we get underway. That concludes my report.
Thank you so much. I don't have any report besides congratulations to those who graduated or are graduating this semester. Certainly thoughts out to you, as this is not the way you thought you'd cross the stage, and we hope to be able to celebrate you all in the future at some point in time, whether it's December or next spring. Certainly appreciate that, and appreciate all the work that the college employees are doing and being nimble and responding. I know it's a lot of extra work and it's different type of work. And so I appreciate everyone's flexibility in figuring out the new normal and how we can operate and still maintain our organization. So thank you to everyone for all your work. Any other comments from any of the trustees? Seeing none, we didn't break a record for meeting length today, but it was certainly not one of our shortest ones, but that is okay. We had business to take care of. And so I appreciate all of the work. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So
I
moved.
so move.
Oh, you all been quick in a hurry to do that. Trustee Ross, second by Dr. Doris A. Graham. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Be safe, healthy, and well out there.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night. How do I do this? Oh.